Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. It is the premier business radio program. I'm your host, Mike King. I appreciate you being here with us. So the views expressed here are mine. I have no connection to support of agreement with any of the hosts, information, or ads on the station. I don't work for the station. My program just airs here on a daily basis. This is part of the Mike King Biz Radio Network, which is ESPN Richmond 106.1, The Choice 105.3, as well as International Business Code Radio, CW Richmond 5 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays is where you can find us talking to the best and the brightest. All righty. So I'm minding my business. So I get to Richmond. I heard about this thing called the Brand Center. Not exactly sure what it was. Over the course of time, I start to hear tidbits about the things that are going on. A lot of cool, innovative, creative things going on. And the Brand Center is at the center of it. So what do? We bring in the person who is running the show, Mr. Vann Graves. Welcome to the program, sir.
Mike, thank you so much for inviting me here, man.
Y'all ready? So I always say it's a business show. So tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name is Vann Graves. I'm the executive director of the VCU Brand Center. I've been here now almost 5 years. And what we do is we're 2-year, right now, our main focus is a 2-year graduate program that focuses on really building students opportunities to work in marketing, advertising, branding, communications, innovation. And our focus is creative problem solving. You know, we're not just about how do you make things, but how do you make things as they pertain to business and brand building. And I mean, and if you ever get a chance, and I need you to come down to the Brand Center and hang out with us for a little bit, it is a funky, fun, unique place where, you know, our students, we don't treat them, you know, you think about college and graduate school and it's professors, faculty, but really, we treat our students as colleagues. Our goal is to educate them and teach them about the craft. And we really, you know, I mean, the university would be mad at me for doing this, but if I could get rid of grades and just say, focus on doing great work, and they do, but don't worry about the grades. But students come in thinking, oh, I need to get that A. I'm just like, if you get the material, you got the A.
So Mike King, Vann Graves is here with us. The whole idea of branding, individual brands. Back when, you know, I'm an old man, I don't want to be like, yo, remember back in the day. But back in the day, you had to be a business to be a brand. Now people have individual brands as a person. And it's sort of the evolution of it. Now, you've been in that space for a while. What's the difference when the students show up at the Brand Center now as opposed to some years ago?
Well, I think that the idea of personal brand is different, right? So even with sports, NIL, right? So it's brands can make you money. Your brand can make you money.
Yes.
And so it's not really about just, Pepsi, Doritos, Visa, MasterCard. Brands are people and people are brands. And so even if you don't want to be out in the world as a brand, guess what? You are.
You are a brand.
And so if you've got an Instagram, you need to be careful. You need to think about how you manage your personal brand.
And we have TikTok.
Well, we didn't.
And there were pictures that remember. I don't know what, and it was. I don't know how the red cup got to be.
Oh my.
The villain.
Oh my.
But people became sensitive of. Let me put this cup down because I don't need to be seen with this because it's going to show up for eternity with me with this red cup.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it wasn't, I mean, I think about the responsibility around personal brand that high school students don't understand, right? So we think about what we see on our TikTok reels. Like, oh my gosh, did that child just say or do that thing? Because there actually needs to be an understanding about personal brand, even in your household, because you're inviting the world into your house once you're on one of these platforms, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, even Facebook. Like, understand the world may not be watching in that moment, but they will dig it up.
They will see it and pull it up. So the Brand Center is known worldwide. How do you set a culture? And I always ask leaders this: how do you set a culture of winning in an organization? And we've gone through some tough times. We're going through the pandemic. Really quickly, besides setting the culture, also, what did you, as a leader of the Brand Center, learn coming through COVID that you would have never done before, but all of a sudden we're like, hey, that was a pretty good idea?
You know, COVID was an opportunity. I mean, it was an opportunity and a hindrance for a lot of companies, a lot of brands, and academic institutions. I came into the brand center and I was lucky because I had strong predecessors, right? So they had set a strong foundation, and I had about a year or so before the pandemic to start to make the moves to build and ensure that we were ready for anything. And I mean, during the pandemic, we rebranded the brand center. We did a major renovation of our space. We now have podcast studios that we didn't have before. And so it allowed us to do some of the thinking as a team offsite to then implement those things when we got back. So it was an advantage for us. It allowed us to reset many things as we thought about curriculum and how to build community. And so because we're a 2-year graduate program, like I mentioned earlier, and because of that, we were out of the building for 2 years. We didn't stop classes, we didn't stop learning, but the physical space is very different than it was when the pandemic started.
And when the students came back, so there were students, had they gone their whole grad experience without really being in a class on campus for the most part?
It was only one class that missed everything. I mean, I really think the class that suffered the most was the class of 2020. Not only because they had me as a new leader and they were trying to figure me out. That always happens when there's new people. And as the economy was booming, they were about to graduate, things were on point, and then shut it down. So they missed out on our graduation, our recruitment session. No one was recruiting, no one was hiring, no one knew what was going on. And that class suffered. I mean, they're a resilient group and they've recovered, but that was tough for them. So the class that came after that started while the pandemic was going, but we started to come back to the building.
Gotcha. Okay. All righty. On the mic, Mr. Vann Graves, doctor. All right. So, sir, I always say we shout out credentials.
Wow.
We shout out credentials because I tell people, you paid for them, and people say, no, we're paying for them.
Yeah.
So so when you were a kid, where'd you grow up?
Richmond, Virginia, born and raised.
Okay. What'd you want to be when you grew up?
An art director for an ad agency.
Okay, sir. You were the creative one?
Yeah.
Did you come from a creative household?
No.
See, okay. So now, as a parent of creatives, it's hard.
Yes.
Because we don't get that thing. So whether it was cutting up clothes, dance moves, calligraphy, it's all of those things, and you're trying to figure out this person.
Yeah.
While you're just looking at them as they're different.
Yes. 100%. No, that was my household. I grew up in a household where my parents grew up in the 50s and 60s. And so they lived this struggle. It was, my father was a part of the Richmond 34. And so, he protested in Richmond, sat at Tallheimers, was arrested, all those things. And they instilled in me this idea of, you got to give back.
Right. We
did our part. We've opened the door for you to do better for others. And I didn't understand that. I was just kind of the goofy kid going through school, because when you went to high school in the 80s, you were too young to see what had just happened in the late 60s.
True.
And you were thinking, oh my gosh, we're children of the dream, right? So Run DMC and Aerosmith were doing Walk This Way. We were all like people, the music was meshing, culture was meshing in a way that had never been seen before, in a very public way. Madonna was coming out, music, everything was this vibe of togetherness. And so growing up, but it also spurred creativity. So music, style, hip hop was popping, right? So that's what I grew up in Richmond. And this side, however, growing up in Richmond with two parents who didn't understand what creativity in that way was, and there was a way to monetize that. So I'm like, I want to be an art director. What is that?
Right, yes.
What are you talking about?
I've had that, yes.
Right. So
conversation.
What you going painting? You doing finger painting? You're not gonna make any money finger painting, boy.
That was the solution that says that was the end all of be all.
Exactly.
Can you make money out of that?
Exactly. And so my parents' attitude again was, we did all this so you can do anything you want, as long as it's a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, or a teacher, anything but these 5 or 6 things. And they did it from a place of love, because they wanted to make sure that I could provide for myself. And they thought I was cuckoo talking about this creative advertising thing. And, there weren't any role models here, but there really weren't many nationally as well. You had Burrell out in Chicago, Uniworld in New York with Byron Lewis, folks out in LA with Carol Watson, but you didn't have that, where you could just point and go, here are the role models in this field. And so the great compromise in my household was marketing, because they understood that that was business. Their son could probably get a job. And then I spent my 4+ years at 4-ish years at Howard University, HU. And
you gotta say the real HU, because you guys sometimes people get into a little bit of skirmish about that. We spend a lot of time on George Avenue hanging out. Yes, we did.
No, I don't look, I look at it as a sibling rivalry. Like, don't talk about don't talk about us HBCUs now. We're about to lockstep. We can talk about each other like dogs. So, one of the great creatives here in Richmond, though, Danny Robinson at the Martin Agency, he went to Hampton. And Danny's the man.
Yes, he is. So I had him on the show. So they came on, and we were down at the Hilton.
Okay.
And I was doing my show, so I had my equipment up, and it's a Martin Agency, and so we're like there. Everything was wrong. We're in the lounge area, and so they're from the Martin Agency. The lighting is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
The sound is horrible, because people are like in the lounge eating, and they're looking around like, what are those guys doing back there? And they're like, no, Mike, it's okay. I'm like, I know you guys are used to controlling everything. And they said, but you'd be surprised, when we did certain commercials during the pandemic, we had to send the equipment to the customer, and then had to send them instructions on how to use it. So when you look at that, and not being in the field, not knowing who Danny was, then all of a sudden saying, wow, that dude's big.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of times people who are from Richmond, they don't get the business environment here.
Yeah, it's true.
They don't get it. So on the mic with Mike, we're here. Vann Graves is here with us. Alrighty, so when you were going, when did you know you got your first shot? That you thought, like, okay, that's something right there.
I, again, always wanted to do this. I left Howard, and I had applied for the American Association of Advertising Agency, the 4A's internship program. And I got an internship at BBDO in New York, which was the Shizniks. Yes. When I was coming up. They were Michael Jackson, Pepsi, Shaq, Pepsi, like it was all of the big things going on. I wanted to really work there. And one of the first projects I worked on while I was up there as a grad student was Pepsi was about to change their tagline. And it was, I can't remember what it was, Choice of New Generation. And they were moving it to Generation Next. So I guess this time it was Nothing Else is a Pepsi. And so I had the opportunity to redesign the logo for Pepsi. So I thought I was doing something. I thought I was the man. You couldn't tell me anything. And I got the call to go up to the CEO's office, Phil Dusenberry. And I was like, all right, I did it. I've arrived. I've made the thing. And so I go into his office. This man's office was massive. And it was everything was white. Like I felt like the air was fresher up there. I don't know what they were doing up there. But a big desk, but he was a small man, perfect tan, perfect hair, perfect teeth. Van, I heard you're really good at this design thing. I heard about the things you've done. Really glad you're here. I have a project I want you to work on for me personally. I'm standing up straight like, okay, What are we going to do? We're about to do this. Well, he says, I want you to work on my dog's Christmas card. I said, what? My dog's Christmas card. I said, you mean your Christmas card? He goes, no. I've got a senior creative working on that. I said, okay, all right. And I took the assignment, went downstairs, shaking my head, going, I'm not sure what just happened. And, I had some great mentors at the agency at the time. And they're like, just knock it out. Do what you do. That is how there's no job too small. And I found out later that was really Phil's way of testing
to see how you took that.
Yep. And so I came back. He had sent me these photographs of his dog and 2 cats, and they were all yawning. And so I mocked up this thing that just had kind of speech bubbles with red and green music notes. And you opened it up and it was fa la 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 la, bow wow meow. And and he was like, this is what I'm talking about. And even though I hadn't finished grad school, he's like, you will have a job here whenever you graduate. This man, and this is why it's important for leaders to be mentors and to really choose those people that they see have potential. He made it a point to call me while I was in grad school, check in. Is there anything you need? Da, 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 da. He made it a point to, when I graduated, he's like, you're not out yet? And I ended up getting a part-time job there while I was at school. So my title, and he made up this crazy title, I was a permanent part-time assistant art director. So if they paid me by the letter, I would have been doing all right. But he checked on me the whole time and made sure. And I graduated, went to start working there, worked my way up. When I left, I was a VP creative director, and he made sure, even in the background, I could tell, always making sure was everything okay, and ensuring that I progressed. He couldn't do everything because there's very few people who looked like me, but he made it a point to be there if I needed it.
There you go. Vann Graves is here with us, the VCU Brand Center. Alrighty, sir, we just come through the Super Bowl, and I was with Dave Saunders of Madison and Maine yesterday. It was bittersweet for me being an Eagles fan. But Andy Reid, we take care of family and we like family, so good for them. I've noticed today that you had posted something right here. All right, sir, the floor is yours when you talk about relationships, mentoring, and being mentored. This is so you were mentored.
Yes.
And now this is paying it forward, and it's showing up in a very big way.
Yeah, it's showing up. I mean, again, our students and our alums are proof points out in the world. And when the Super Bowl comes along every year, we want to make sure we highlight that because they're doing it, and they're doing it in big ways. Now, I got the stats handed to me just before I walked out of here, so I apologize. I'm doing a little reading.
We want it.
So this is the fourth consecutive Super Bowl where 20 plus Brand Center alums have been involved in creating spots for the big game. This year, 22 alumni contributed to 18 spots, and then 2 more to what we call adjacent spots, which are the ones that kind of play pregame and postgame. Brand Center alums were involved in creating almost a third of this year's spots. So think about that. This little school in Richmond, Virginia, their alums, our alums, did almost a third of the spots that were out there. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
That's crazy. Because I always ask people, the creative side in Richmond is on fire.
Yes.
And what is it? Everybody, every time says it's VCU. Mm-hmm. It is VCU. What is it about the culture of VCU that really causes that?
I think the seeds were planted early. I mean, you've got President Rao, Dr. Rao, who really has helped to build that. Prior to him, President Trani. You've got people who saw that VCU could be more than just kind of a commuter school, which Richmond was, mm-hmm. And what can we do? And so we've grown as a research institution. We have grown as an innovation institution. So whether it be the Brand Center or Da Vinci or other programs.
So we're going to get to that, which is always, people are kind of confused.
Yes.
But these are all high-level places. So when I had Dr. Westlake on, it's like, explain that Da Vinci thing. Mm-hmm. And it's you here at the Brand Center. But Big Al comes in and he says, no, that's sports leadership.
Yes. So think of it this way. If you look at the School of Business in VCU, okay, and that is the kind of our epicenter. Within the School of Business, there are 3 centers that you've heard about that have kind of crossed here. So Dr. Westlake Garrett, mm-hmm. Da Vinci, a part of the School of Business. The Brand Center, which is where I work, part of the School of Business. Dr. Carrie LaCrom, Center of Sports Leadership, part of the School of Business. So we are the jewels in the crown jewel of the School of Business. And we do very different things, but work together as we develop programs, as we partner with the community. We hold it down for the school to be.
Yes, you do. And when I look at it, and so I tell people, Richmond's a lot like Philly. I mean, it looks the same. The whole Broad Street,
Yes.
Temple, VCU. It's that energy that you get, and you don't get that from other schools. And I spent 10 years up at Penn State. There's energy, but it's not the energy that's driven when you're in the middle of a city, and it has that feel to it.
One, it's a city vibe, but it's also, we talked about this earlier before we got on air. It's also that hustler vibe.
Yes, it is.
And so the folks that are going to VCU, VCU serves a community that is of Richmond. And so most of the students come from Richmond or the Virginia area, a lot of first gen students. So that's that hunger that it's just in the soul.
You can't manufacture
that.
It's either there or it's not.
Yeah, and it's not about, you hear people talk about side hustle. No, it is the hustle.
It is no side hustle.
So Philly, there are parts of New York, uptown Harlem, like there are places where you go where you feel the hustle. You feel like, oh, I'm gonna make this money, I'll make it happen. You go into the School of Business, you walk across campus, Monroe Park, you go to the former MCV, which is our health system now. Like, people are hustling, they're making it happen, whether it be innovations, whether it's creativity, whether it's just business as a whole, it's happening.
All righty, Mike King, Vann Graves is here with us. So let's put on the educator hat for a minute.
All right.
So students come to the Brand Center and they're new. They got their credentials, they come, they come with the gear and the hardware. But you see them, what's the look then as opposed to as they're going through the program and you starting to see them get it? And then all of a sudden we get to graduation day.
Pressure produces diamonds, and our goal is to get them camera ready, right? And the Brand Center is a rigorous program. And sometimes students come in like, oh, look, to your point, I got the credentials, I'm ready to go, ready to do this. It's like, yeah, but you're not ready. And I always describe the Brand Center as kind of peaks and valleys. And so in the 2 years, your first year, first semester, you're like, okay, I'm gonna work really hard. And then at that end of that first semester, like, oh my God, what is going on? I got all this work hitting at me, da da da. And then you get your internship, you have a cool summer, and then you're back to where you were on the rise of that next summit. You're like, oh my gosh. And then you realize when at the top of that summit, wait, I'm about to graduate. I need to be ready for the real world, but they get it done. And it's because I have an amazing faculty. The Brand Center's always had amazing faculty that focuses on getting them ready for today's business world and helping them understand that, 20 years ago, people were talking about business over here, innovation and brand building over here, creativity, like they were all separate things. Now today, the expectation is for students to be, or new hires to be, polymathic. And so we train our students to be that. So if I think about when I started in the industry, you could have an account person in the room, a creative in the room, actually two creatives, your art director and your writer and your strategist, and we were selling an idea. Well, now clients are like, we're not paying for 4 people to come up here and pitch this idea. So creative, what's the strategy? How does this solve my business problem? What's the ROI? So you're not just creating pretty pictures, you're solving a business problem.
All right, sir. So from the business standpoint, it's always hard to find an engineer who can sell, or either a salesperson who is technical enough to sell. So you're right now, before we had 4 people going up to sell this project. Now you're putting it on, who do you put it on? You put it on the creative to go up, now he has to learn how to close the deal, or you have a salesy person, they may not be that strong on the other side.
No, that's right. So again, because we are cross-disciplinary, so your strategist understands creative. They might not be able to design, they might not be able, but they understand. They understand how, but also I think it's more than just explaining. I think it's having an understanding of the craft, an understanding of, the creatives understand what the strategists do. They may not understand it as well as that strategist, but they know enough to understand how it impacts the business. The same way the strategist feels about the creative process, copywriting versus art directing, or whether you're thinking about experience design, how do customers flow through the process of marketing, top of the funnel all the way down. So they all learn that and they all have an understanding of that, so they can speak to it and they're subject matter experts.